Hello everybody and welcome back to World of Warships and Legends. My name is Spartan Elite 43 and tonight we have our first look at the Tier 6 French cruiser, the Algerie. So, without further ado, let's get into the commander. We're using Andrei Lemonnier, we are using Isiroko Yamamoto, and Nikolai Kuznetsov for the extra range. We are using Beyond Range, Igniter, Punch Through, and Fixated, along with Fully Packed. For the ship itself, we are running Aiming Systems Mod 1, Steering Gears Mod 2, and Concealment System Mod. We are fully upgraded. So if we get into the stats, as you can see, we have 3 sonar consumables, 4 planes, and 3 engine boosts. Stats: 35,600 hit points with 16% torpedo damage reduction. The main batteries, we have 8 8-inch guns in a 4x2 configuration. So you get 4 guns over the front, 4 guns over the rear. 17.3 kilometer firing range with a 12-second reload time on our current build. 17% chance to set fire, 2,800 maximum HE shell damage, and 5,040 AP shell damage. The AP is very, very good, as you would expect out of the French. Almost too good sometimes. Torpedo launchers. You get 6 torps, 3 per side. They're 550 millimeters. They reload in a minute and a half, and they do 15,833 damage with a torpedo detectability of 1.3 kilometers. They reach out to 10 kilometers, and they do 60 knots. Not the fastest torpedoes in the world, but very, very handy when you need them. Maximum speed of 31 knots. Turning circle is 660, so not particularly amazing. 7.6 second rudder shift time. Detectability by sea is 11.7. It's not great, but not horrible. 7 kilometer detectability by air, which is a little on the high side for a cruiser. 2 kilometers are guaranteed, and then the 7.5 kilometers while firing in smoke. Again, a little bit higher than a lot of your cruisers, but it is 8-inch guns, so it is to be expected. Overview. You get a broad launch. You get a wider maximum spread torpedo launcher. Generally speaking, I don't use the wide spread very often, if ever. Fast, it's above average maximum movement speed, only when it's got the engine boost consumable going. Otherwise, it's not particularly fast. Compromising. Higher caliber AB shells or AP shells may overpin the armor, but they may still arm depending on shell velocity. Yes. The big downside to these French cruisers that I've noticed, they're very, very predictable in a cruiser versus cruiser, but against battleships, if you take a hit from a battleship, just assume it's going to be a Citadel, because it seems like this thing gets Citadel by battleships every time somebody looks at it. Algerie, the last heavy cruiser built for the French Navy, and one of the best representatives of this type of ship in Europe. Among the cruisers of her time, she was distinguished by powerful armor and very good torpedo protection. She entered service in 1934, and there were one of them in the series. So, let's take a look at her. Again, it's a French ship. It's not a bad-looking ship. I like the fact that it doesn't sit particularly high out of the water. It's not like your British heavy cruisers and such that sit 10 stories out of the water. But it's still a very large cruiser, so it does tend to take a lot of rounds, even when you're trying to dodge them. And the rudder shift of this thing, while it's not horrendous, it doesn't turn really well right away. So like you start to turn, and it feels like it takes forever to start turning, but once it does start turning, it turns pretty well. So, with that being said, let's get to the gameplay. Alrighty, so we are going to be on Land of Fire, and we're going to happen to be top tier. There's a lot of battleships in this one, so I was feeling pretty good about the chances of having a pretty solid game. But, I'll be real with you guys. The French cruisers just aren't my thing. I like the ships, and 1v1ing people, not a problem. I like it feels a lot like my Baltimore, except that it gets torpedoes, which is a huge thing, right? The only downside is it seems like every single time that you can have things go wrong, everything goes wrong with the French cruisers. You can be really, really strong. You'll be in the midst of an amazing game, and then just out of the blue, you're dead. That's the way it works. Or at least that's been my experience with all of the cruisers up to this point. It seems like I can have really, really good, strong starts, and then just suddenly, out of the blue, I'm back at port, and I'm like, what happened? It's just the way these things are. Like, you get confident, and just as you start to get your confidence and get rolling, everything goes horribly wrong. But in this match, not so much. This match is going to be pleasantly surprising. This ship is one of those few cruisers that are very good at both AP and AG. Much like the American cruisers, you do not want to sleep on this ship. They will goad you into fire or to going broadside with their HE, and then they will switch to AP and absolutely wreck your world. So keep that in mind, cruisers. I will do that to you. I've done it many, many times where I just shoot HE at somebody to make them think, oh, it's okay, I'll go broadside. And then the next salvo that I've already got loaded is AP, and I just absolutely wreck them. Whether I'm in this or the Baltimore, it's a very good strategy, and it catches a lot of people off guard because they always assume that you're just going to be spamming HE. And you guys know by now that ain't me. I'm not the fire starter kind of guy. Now, where most other fire starters struggle to carry matches, the French can't necessarily have to worry about that. They can definitely carry a match. But when they carry, there's going to be a lot of up-close battles, especially against cruisers. Against cruisers, there's not a whole lot that I'm particularly worried about. Most cruiser players do not know how to kill other cruisers. I don't know why, but that's just the way it is. It doesn't matter if I'm in Americans, Japanese, Germans, French, Italian, doesn't matter. If I get into a fight, cruiser versus cruiser, 9 times out of 10, I win that fight. Just out of people just not knowing how to fight other cruisers. They don't know when to use HE. They don't know when to use AP. They don't know when to use their torpedoes or, that sort of thing. Or who has torpedoes. And so the one good side of me playing so many different ships is the fact that I can backlog all this information in my head and get a pretty good idea of who I need to, or what I'm up against and what I need to worry about with that ship. It's a huge tool to have in your tool belt, man. And I'm not a particularly amazing player. You guys know this. I've always said I'm above average. But having that extra information in a 1v1 is a huge advantage. That being said, I did get into a fight with a York earlier. It was actually one match after this match. I decided to try to get another match because I thought I could get a better one. But this match is pretty good. So you can imagine how that fight ended up. I was goading him in. I did my job right. I did everything perfectly. I hit him perfectly with the AP center ship bottom at the waterline, and I got all over pins. And needless to say, he did not. I was expecting him to die. Instead, we traded places. But that is the only time I've lost a cruiser versus cruiser fight in this particular ship. I generally win versus cruisers. I was actually in a match on Sleeping Giant in this thing where I was holding off 2 cruisers and a destroyer at the same time. So I am very confident in my cruiser ability versus other cruisers. I don't mind it. But at the end of the day, it comes down to a few plays here and there, and it just seems like this ship is very general purpose. Meaning it's not really a specialty at anything. But it's not really got any weakness either other than battleships. Battleships kill this thing like nobody's business. And it doesn't matter what battleship shoots at you. It don't matter how far or how close. If it hits you, you're going to be taking a citadel. Anywhere on your ship. Anywhere on your ship. I actually got hit at the very back of my ship. 1 shell. 12,000 damage to a warspite. So, when I say anywhere on your ship, I mean it. If a shell grazes the conning tower, I'm pretty sure it'll be a citadel in the ship. So you've got to be very, very careful against large caliber armor piercing. Now, against smaller caliber armor piercing, as long as you're not presenting a flat broadside, you will generally be okay. Because the French cruisers have spaced armor. And against low caliber armor piercing, it is absolutely effective. In the absolute sense of that word. Like, the armor on these French ships, while it doesn't seem like it exists, if you've ever had to fight one with armor piercing, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because they seem like they're invulnerable. You get good hits, it'll say you're getting penetrations, but you get no damage. And the reason is the spaced armor. The spaced armor means that there's an extra check in there for armor penetration, and unless you get both, unless you have enough penetration to get through both checks, then there is a good chance that you are just going to get a single penetration and no damage whatsoever, because it gets absorbed by the spaced armor. So finally, my adversary has decided he wants to fight me. Now, this is a Boise. It's a heavy cruiser. It's got big guns as well. He's going to be trying to spam HE. I am going to shoot HE at him now that he's bow tanking. We got a good opening salvo on him. We're getting some help from the right side battleship. And we're closing the distance. Now, here is what I'm talking about with trying to goad people into going broadside. Now, I know I have torps. He knows I have torps. So I feign the torp launch initially. I want him to think that I'm launching torpedoes now. And the goal is to get him to open up. I don't want him to stay broadside to me. But he doesn't. In his mind, he stays the course, and that is a good idea. We do finally launch the torpedoes, and then we have a better angle. We actually fired a hair too soon, but it's okay because we're about to get the rear guns in. And we've got a much better angle. And after hitting him with the torps, it really wasn't that long for him to survive. Like, he's just not going to get loaded before my rear guns get there. So we get away with it, even though we made a bit of a mistake there, firing the guns a little bit early. But overall, I like the ships. It's just that they don't really fit well with me because they're just too squishy. I like ships that can take hits. And while these can take hits from cruisers, that's it. Battleships look at this thing, bad things happen. But I don't hate them. They're not bad ships. And I know there's a lot of people out there that love their French cruisers. It just doesn't fit with me. But I enjoyed my time in them. It's not like I hate them. It's just frustrating as crap that every time that you do make a mistake, you die. There's no middle ground there. If you're not perfect, you die. And that's just my opinion, of course. Take it with a grain of salt. But as we get closer and closer to the end of this match, we have the Bayern over there. We're going to try to hit the Bayern. Now, obviously, the Sinop that's over here in the Little Islands fighting our cruiser clearly just went in for a torp run on him. And this Bayern is actually coming out. We're going to try to set him on fire again. And we get it right off the bat. London manages to torp the Sinop, and we finish off. We don't get the kill. The friendly battleships got the kill. But we did a pretty good job. Nothing crazy, no barn burners, but just a good, solid performance. So, if you like what I'm doing, punch the like button, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, I will see you in the next video.